A little while back, I was asked to join Katie Allen for an interview for her podcast called Speaking of Inclusion. And it was such a great opportunity for us to talk about sleep problems and how you can develop great quality sleep for many years to come, no matter who you are as a person. As you can imagine, when we really address this idea of inclusion, we've got to look at different people from different backgrounds. And one of the things that we did talk about was neurodiverse traits. Now, how I look at these in my work as a sleep coach is really looking at how you are different and how that difference relates to your sleep problems or your ability to sleep well for many years to come. And I think it was a really great way to look at how we would want to approach this topic in a different and very, very practical way. So in this video, I'm going to share with you a couple of different parts of that conversation. The first one being really talking about neurodiverse traits and how I work with them in a different way in my sleep coaching practice. Then we're going to look at what does it even mean to look at sleep as a set of skills rather than just throwing tips at maybe the sleep problems that you have. So again, when I look at my work as a sleep coach, I teach people practical skills to work with who they are. And then the third part was very much about the specific scenario that we talked about when you might actually have a conversation with someone, maybe a heated one, or maybe it's about something good, so it doesn't have to be negative. But it's not that easy to put those things to the side when you climb into bed. So, how would you even approach this idea of separating those things, separating those emotions and those conversations out from the nighttime? So, see, these three different things is really going to help you to look at these specific situations that we talked about and look at how they might relate to you. So in today's video really is just an introduction of this entire podcast interview. If you want to either listen or watch the entire interview, then I put the link below for you. Go and check it out. We had a really great conversation. We talked about so many different things, not just these three main things that I'm going to be sharing with you.
Before
Yeah.
we get to those things a bit more deeply,
Mhm.
I do want to ask, how, when we're thinking about people's kind of styles and preferences and the way that we might be, and I love the way you described it as that kind of that bi-directional relationship between thoughts and feelings, because we are kind of in a tangle between both of them most of the time, aren't we?
Mhm.
How, or do you see, certainly with your clients or in your research, how do you see this impacting certain kind of neurodiversities as well, in terms of the way our
Yeah.
brains function differently? This must play insomnia and sleep must have a different impact there as
Oh,
well.
yeah, totally. What we have now is more understanding of where we fit. So a lot of the neurodiversity is a scale, right? So are you fitting into a scale of the definition? But that scale is still a scale. So you might be on the lower end, you might be in the middle, you might be on the higher end. And how sleep relates is it's a 24 hours. So if we put sleep in the middle, not at the end of it, so often people think of sleep as the end of the day, right? I like to actually explain it in a way that it's in the middle. So you've got your lunchtime to evening, let's say, just for argument's sake, you've got your sleep in the middle, and then you've got your after, first thing or first half of your day. So if you have any sort of tendencies, so neurodiverse tendencies, or if you've been diagnosed, again, that's why I want to sort of keep it a bit loose, you're gonna know how that affects the way you are. It's not that something is wrong, it's that you're just different.
Yeah.
Therefore, your sleep will be different in relation to who you are.
Yeah.
So if you're waking up in the morning, let's say, and again, I'm just going to give you my example. I'm not diagnosed with any sort of neurodiverse, but I'm pretty sure I'm recognizing a lot of the traits. So if I'm waking up in the morning and my mind goes real fast, almost this high attention and very fast thoughts, and I live in that for most of my day, my brain, my mind will not understand what's the opposite, because I'm spending 8, 9, 10, 12 hours in that role, in that personality trait group. So it's not just one, it's often combination. So if we don't spend so much time almost practicing that part of us, we don't see the other side. So the opposite would be, let's say, a relaxed mind. Now, the mind will never be empty. Sometimes people put the pressure on, well, I've got to empty my mind. It's not quite that way. If you're awake, your mind has to create thoughts because it's the consciousness. So it's never going to be empty. But I normally describe it in how fast or how attached you are to maybe that behavior. Like for me, I could overthink all day, but what that will mean is that it will never stop at 10 o'clock when I'm wanting to switch it off because it's not used to stopping. So the way I then help people is that we put in different behaviors that allows the brain and the mind to understand that I don't have to function at that level all the time. Oh, I can change into this other version. So if we're going with someone, for example, again, me, if I'm always overthinking and I never train my mind to understand what the opposite of it can't create it. So and this is what used to happen, is when I used to just get into bed, my mind would be like, well, what are we doing next? We've done all these things during the day. Just because we lie down, well, you're not telling me what to do next. But actually what we should do is not do, right? So that's hopefully helped to kind of understand how I see these things. It's not that these traits or neurodiverse, maybe diagnosis is preventing sleep to develop, is that we don't know how to proactively work with that part of us.
Right. I guess that makes a lot of sense, because I guess it is taken for granted generally, isn't it, that, you know, at the end of the day, it gets dark, we get into bed, we fall asleep, and it's just the thing that everybody does. But actually it's not. Like, that's not the case for everybody. Otherwise, you know, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
So actually it's about then understanding, well, let's not continue to perpetuate that myth that it is just shut your eyes, everybody falls asleep. That actually, if that's not a universal experience, then how, like you said, how do we train ourselves to work with ourselves? And some of the things that were popping into my mind as you were saying that as well is, and I really like when you were talking about like those sleep transitions, in that we, you know, we haven't developed the skills to be able to either fall asleep initially or to return to sleep if we are woken up. And I like the fact that we're calling it a skill. So it's a learned thing, right? We can, if someone's listening to this, cheers, thanks for telling me I haven't developed that skill. We can learn it though, right? That's what we're saying.
Absolutely. Human behavior is much more fluid. Like, if we can learn a new language, if we can learn to exercise, if we can learn to meditate, if we can learn to breathe slower, if we can learn to communicate more effectively with someone who is different to us, we can learn. The problem with, again, I see in the sleep industry is it's not talked about that way. It's almost scientifically talked about, but we're not talking about the human behaviors that surround sleep. So when you sleep, while we talk about switching off, your mind, your brain is active. But
well, otherwise we'd die, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, let's just call it out. If our brains decided for 8 hours to switch off, I don't know anybody whose body could function without the critical support the brain gives you for 8 hours.
Absolutely. And so the way I talk about it is more sort of the capacity of the mind, so the perception and it's really, sleep is very much about autopilot behaviors that are inside of you that you don't have to think about, because they happen. The entire sleep context, all the 5 different sleep stages that you alternate between are automated. We just often actually develop daytime behaviors that prevent the good behaviors or good sleep behaviors to happen naturally. So again, if somebody is really active during the day, let's say physically active, we take another avenue here. If you're always physically active, and you could sort of spot that. So even if you do office work, but maybe you're also always tapping your fingers, or your legs are always going, or you just kind of more fidgety, what that means is your body is continuously creating that energy because you have to move. You can't expect yourself to be lying down for 8 hours and that behavior never to show up if it's automatically showing up during the day when you are just sitting down, right? Again, emotions, if you're more of that type of person who gets very sensitive to things, nothing wrong with that. We're not labeling it as a negative. You're just that type that you, maybe somebody says something and it affects you more, then that's not going to turn off just because you shut your eyes,
Yeah, just because you
right?
look at the alarm and think, oh, well, it's half
Yeah,
past 9. I should be making my way to bed now. I'll just put all
yeah,
of that stuff to one side.
right. And so these are internal behaviors that you've learned from very, very, very early age. Like, we're talking baby age here, right? You develop personality traits very early on. And so when I talk about sleep skills, it's how do you proactively create something? And again, to simplify it, because it sounds too big almost, or like, where do I begin? So when I talk about transitioning into sleep, it's physical, emotional, mental relaxation first. You're never going to fall asleep if you're not relaxed enough for your body to be able to say, right, this is that time. If you're edgy, if you're fidgety, if you're frustrated, upset, disappointed, nervous, if your mind is thinking about what happened 3 hours ago, or it's thinking about tomorrow I've got an important meeting, or recalling memories from a summer holiday you had because it was rainy all day and you're really upset about the fact that it's rainy all day, you're not necessarily relaxed at that time. You're too far away from that physical, emotional, mental relaxation. So the way I teach this to my clients is so that they can understand what they're seeing first. So if a client is nervous and they don't see how they got to 70% nervousness from 0 to 70, it might have started at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but they haven't managed to decrease it. And it just creeps up a bit more. So if we take a skill, for example, we take running, you can only accelerate and run fast if you become faster. As you start running, you start taking faster steps. Your heart has to work harder. So you're building up to sprinting. And as soon as you stop, your heart isn't just going to calm down straight away. It takes a while to bring down everything when you stopped running, for example. So the mind is the same. If your racing thought has developed over a 3 hour period, again, a 5 minute meditation, which is often advised, isn't going to counter 3 hours of acceleration for your thoughts. It's too short. It might distract you from it. But again, most of you who might have experimented with meditation, when you stop meditation, your mind just goes racing again because it was just distracting rather than decreasing, right? So, and again, I hope that this helps you all to see what I mean by skills. We know we can decrease the racing mind, we just don't proactively practice it.
Yeah, perfect. I think that's a fantastic, some really great metaphors or analogies in there around. It's absolutely true, isn't it? And a lot of the advice, like you said, that is readily available or that is most commonly spoken about is those quick fixes, like just have a hot bath, just do a meditation, just, as if like that's all it will take. But actually what you're explaining here is this is a skill, and in the same way that you would learn a new language, you have to keep practicing, you have to keep putting effort into developing that skill. And that's not something that you do it for 5 minutes and you're gonna be like, got that skill sorted. It's not like getting a badge or something. It's
Yeah.
that you have to actually work at it, I'm hearing. Can I throw in a little side
Yeah.
mission conversation then?
Yes.
Because what that's also brought up for me then is the whole statement, and I know a lot of people that say this, which is never go to sleep on an argument, because that for me speaks to that. Well, then you have to wrap things up so you're satisfied. But I also don't think that that's the most helpful advice, because for me to get a resolution, being a feeler type,
Yeah.
I could quite happily, and my partner will attest to this if I'm allowed, like I could stay up until the sun comes right back up again, talking about my feelings and how I feel. And if I don't get a resolution, we're going to be going all day. So perhaps sometimes, there's another solution to that as well, surely.
And that's a good one, actually. Both for thinker types, we don't want to kind of make this too much about one or the other. It's not a competition. We're all different, right? So we're taking that principle. So, for example, if we take the base principle that I teach or I talk about with my clients is whatever your nighttime, so your definition of nighttime, I'll give you my example. So mine is 11 to 7 is what my nighttime is. Most people label it as sleep time. I don't. So that's my nighttime. What that means is my job between 11 and 7 is to increase physical, emotional, mental relaxation in order to be able to expand my sleep into that time frame. Okay? So if you take this example, so don't go to bed with an argument in your head or mind or whatever. So if you're going to bed and you still not closed off your day, you're never beginning your nighttime. You're carrying it in. You might fall asleep because you're tired, but you're packaged that in and you're bringing it into your bed environment.
Yep.
Right? And that's going to be unconsciously there because it's not separated out.
Yep.
So what do we mean by separating it out? So for a more emotional type person, and this is going to be some variables as well, for some people, they feel like either they need to have the conversation with the person who's upset them, annoyed them, whatever that is, in order to have the resolution, right? Now, how I teach it is that you just have to separate it out and you can pick it up again at the other end, but you're not carrying it through.
Yep.
So some people, and again, that advice often leads to somebody's going to ring someone late at night because what they want is the resolution in order to sleep well. But you can just teach yourself, and again, this is where the skills are where you would go from here is if you can't just separate it out and it seeps in, what you don't have as a skill is that separation. Most people call it letting go. I don't call it letting go because it's the purpose of it is not to never to think about it or feel it, is that your nighttime is protected from it.
Yeah. It's like pressing pause.
Yeah. And telling your body and your mind and your emotions that between, again, my example, 11 to 7, this is not the purpose of that time frame. The purpose of the nighttime is to elevate physical, emotional, and mental relaxation in order to make the most of our rest and relaxation. But we label it sleep. So we highly pressurizing the sleep part without the foundation of the relaxation first. Thank you very much for checking out this video. This was only 3 parts of that entire interview I recorded with Katie Allen. So if you want to look at the full interview and look at really the different parts that we talked about with Katie, you're very welcome to go ahead and either check out the podcast link, or you can also look at it in the video version from her YouTube channel. So, of course, if you've got any other questions about these different things that we discuss, you're very welcome to reach out and ask further questions. Maybe some of those situations are actually really related to you and how you struggle with sleep in a different way. So thank you again, and I will see you in the next video.